Hey everybody, I hope you're all doing well out there. I realised the other day, in all of the videos I've made over the years of doing so many different things to motorcycles, I have never done a dedicated video on how to change a motorcycle battery. It's a simple thing that you will have to do, and I totally forgot to ever cover this. I mean, it's been kind of covered in other videos, but never directly. So let's get on with it, because this CBR 500R, Reno's bike, needs a new battery. This also is a good opportunity for me to show you what it looks like when you need a new battery. So as you can see, the immobiliser light is flashing, so that all seems good. Now, we'll turn it on and listen to the pump. That sounds a little sluggish to me. Now let's try and start it. As you should be able to see, when I try and start it, the lights are just turning off. And nothing's happening, we're not even getting a click from the starter solenoid. So this is a typical example of a dead battery that confuses people, because it seems to all be working and you're like, well, it must be just something's not connecting right. But it is, it's just there's not enough power there to crank it. Now this bit's going to vary depending on what bike you have. Obviously you need to get down to the battery. On the CBR 500R, it's a case of removing the rear seat cowl, like so, or the rear seat if you have one of those. And then we need to undo these two bolts. On some bikes you'll just have to take the seat up. On other ones it might be slightly more complicated than this. This is sort of middle of the road trickiness, but it's not difficult at all, as you see. And then the seat just lifts out. We have a battery. So here is the battery. It's just got a strap holding it down. We need to disconnect the terminals from the battery, and there is an order that you're supposed to do this. To take the battery off, you take the negative off, then the positive off, and then when you put the new battery in, it's positive on, negative on. So you can remember it as negative first, negative second. Okay, take the bolt out. This is the main bike harness. You may have extra things like this for auxiliary power things like heated grips. So let's just get that out of the way. You really want to make sure it stays out of the way. You can grab like a piece of wood or something to make sure it's non-conductive before you undo the other side. Yeah, we can lift that out of the way. Now to undo these straps, you tend to find one end and sort of push it down and flick out the edge, and there we go. One old battery. Is that really how those people did this? Wow. There's also hex nuts in there rather than the standard blocks, unless these come with hexagon shaped nuts. Normally they're square. I thought I'd very quickly add a bit in here as to explain why batteries, lead acid batteries like this, die. Basically in here there are lead plates and an acid, and over time, depending on how the battery is used, phosphates, I believe it is, build up on the plates, and it reduces the conductiveness of each cell, because there's like pairs of cells that build up the overall voltage. If your battery dies, you're probably going to first notice it in the winter time, because when it's colder it becomes less efficient, it hasn't got as much power. However, the damage is actually done in the summer when it gets too hot, to my understanding. That's when all the phosphates build up, and because the temperatures are high still, you get enough cranking power, but as soon as it gets cold, that's when you notice them die, which is why you always have this happen, you know, in the beginning of autumn, around this time of year. Now, if you don't ride your bike daily, say you only ride it at weekends, it would be advisable to put a trickle charger, or a maintainer as they're known, on the battery, which basically means that when it's in the garage you plug in a cable and it just keeps the battery charged. It charges it up and then it lets it go down a bit and then it charges it up, and that keeps the battery healthy. If a lead acid battery is allowed to go dead and then you fully charge it and then it goes dead and then you fully charge it, that massively shortens the life of the battery. So there you go. When I was a lad, batteries are different. They came with bottles of acid and you put the acid in yourself to activate them. Now these days they come as sealed units and they're maintenance free. There's our little nuts and bolts. And the reason for that is that people kept chucking acid over each other. Before we get going, let's just double check. Batteries are measured in height, width, length. So height and width the same. Length is the same. The old one's 12 volts, new one's 12 volts. The old one was 9.1 amp hours and this is 8.6, so not a huge difference there. Okay, this is where we can help ourselves in a minute. The little blocks that come, make sure you get the orientation right, because obviously you can connect the battery from here or here, it depends how it sits in the bike. On this bike it sits like this. See if these bolts, when the block is in, reach the bottom. If they do, great, you're not going to have any major issues because it will pick it up. On some batteries, the bolts are too short to actually reach down there, and then you need to do things like put little pieces of duct tape in to like shim it up. I have a video on that I'll link at the end. Honestly, fiddling with a screwdriver, trying to get it propped up where you're trying to get a screw to catch in the side of a bike is so annoying. Just put the pieces of tape in and you can pull them out after. So because of the orientation of the battery and the fact that these bolts are long enough, I'm not going to do any of that because I know that it's going to be easy to get these in. Famous last words. Right, so now the battery's in, you've got to get this strap over and you sort of have to stretch it and hold it in the middle so you don't have to put so much tension on it, and then the last bit, just do that. Easy. So I'm going to put the nut in like so. Then we need to get the main connector. Remember what I said, negative first then negative second, so it's positive first when going back on. Line it all up and then hope that nut hasn't moved, which it hasn't, and it's picked it up. And get the alignment of all the cables right and give it a little nip. You have to go too tight. Repeat that for the negative, so the nut's in, that's on, it's in line. And that's basically it. One final step that's a good thing to do is take some dielectric grease, like a clear silicone grease, specifically is dielectric, and you can smear that on the terminal a little bit, and that will help stop any corrosion or water ingress or any issues. Alright, so to remove my light. Obviously that's not the way I intended to remove it. Yeah, that's all good. Put the seat back on. Put our rear cowl back on. So now when we start this up, the fuel pump's probably going to sound totally different. Yep. And now, it's been a while. Okay, let the fuel pump prime a few times. So there we go, we're all done. Some people might say about pre-charging the battery before you put it in the bike. I don't see any reason you can't do that, but it's just not something I've ever felt the need to do. I just chuck the battery in and take the bike for a ride, for a reasonable little ride. And I find that that's a great way of getting it started and tops up the juice that's in there. But yeah, basically that's how you change a motorcycle battery. It's very simple. Obviously it can be more complicated on some bikes compared to others. But at the end of the day, just remember, negative off first, negative on second, and you're all good. If you enjoyed this video, smack that like button. If you want to learn any more stuff, look in the playlists on my channel. If you want to help support this channel, please consider doing that through Patreon. Otherwise, good luck, and I'll catch you in the next one. Bye bye.